Okay, we're going to get this rally going. Everybody here? Yes. Okay, so my name is Anne-Marie Garti, and I'm one of the founding members of the group Stop the Pipeline. And we want to welcome everybody here today for this rally to save New York from Ferc. We're actually here to save us all from Ferc, not just New York. So first I have to thank everybody who helped make this day a success, including our mother and the son, and the water spirits who came yesterday rather than today. But I'd particularly like to thank Mark O, who really carried the brunt of the load. So everybody give a call out to everybody who helped. So I'm just going to say a couple of things just to kind of get us going here today. And I know that a lot of people are here from a lot of different fights, and that we all really identify with our fights. I do it, we all do it, but it's important to understand that all of these projects are just part of one network. It's all one pipeline, it's all one system. And so whether you're opposing the Constitution Pipeline in Pennsylvania or New York, or whether you're opposing the Kinder Morgan Tennessee Gas Pipeline in New York or in Massachusetts or in New Hampshire or beyond, or whether you're opposing Crestwood's methane and propane storage at Seneca Lake, or Dominion's compressor stations in Madison and Montgomery counties, or whether you're opposing the Millennium or Algonquin pipelines or their affiliated projects, we are all fighting Ferc. It is all one pipeline, just like our arteries are all one system or the rivers are all one system. It is all one pipeline network. There is not one project or another project. It is one project. Keep that in mind. So with Constitution, Williams and Cabot are the main partners in it, and they think it's just fine to cut down 700,000 trees. And they think it's just fine to tear open 35 miles of steep slopes and to blast or rip apart 43 miles of bedrock and cross over 10 miles of wetlands and almost 300 streams. They think that's all fine. What do they say? No problem. No problem, they say. And of course, Ferc agrees and parrots their response. No problem, says Ferc. They'll plant grass to replant those trees. That's just as good. And the worst of it is that all of the other agencies go along with this. They do little to counter the destructive codependent relationship between Ferc and the pipeline companies. So those who should be protecting us are not. But fortunately, under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act, state water quality standards are elevated to a federal level. This gives states a power to say no to Ferc. So just like we asked the landowners to just say no to the pipeline company as a way to preserve their property rights, and started a revolution across the country in doing that, as landowners across the United States all say no to the pipeline companies and keep them off their land, just like we asked those landowners, now we're asking the governor to just say no. And when New York State does that, Governor Cuomo will reestablish the power of the state to protect its water and diminish the power of Ferc and the fossil fuel industry to destroy our precious resources. That's what we're doing here today. We're going to start a revolution with governors, just like we started a revolution with landowners. So next, we're going to have our actual speakers who will tell you why he should take that step. And first up, we have Wenonah Hauter, who's the founder and executive director of Food and Water Watch. They were the first national organization to demand a ban on fracking. She has worked extensively on food, water, energy, and environmental issues at all levels of the government. A skilled and accomplished organizer, she has developed grassroots field strategy and action plans. Ms. Hauter is the author of a forthcoming book, one that should interest many of you here today, Fracked, The Battle for the Future of Energy and the Environment. It's due for publication later this year. Wenonah Hauter.
Hey, great to see you all. It's hard to believe that 16 months ago we were here celebrating that Governor Cuomo had responded to the grassroots campaign and banned fracking. Now, less than 2 years later, the state of New York is at another crossroads. Governor Cuomo can be a climate hero and say no to the Constitution pipeline and all the billions of dollars of infrastructure that's going to lock New York into 40 more years of fossil fuel. We think Governor Cuomo has it in him to say no to the Constitution pipeline. So there are a lot of reasons to say no. You may have read in the New York Times this week that climate chaos is causing the West End Arctic ice sheet to melt, and by 2100, it's going to inundate New York City and a number of other coastal cities. That's a good reason. But I'm really here to talk about the Constitution pipeline and New York's precious water resources. Now, I just wrote a book about the history of the oil and gas industry, and I can tell you where there are pipelines, there are always leaks, massive spills, and horrific explosions. That is the history of the pipeline industry. And there is very, very lax oversight. There are no construction standards. There is no monitoring. There are no government checkups. The oil and gas industry and the pipeline corporations, they do everything on the cheap. That's why since between 1994 and 2014, there were 11,000 pipeline accidents. The oil and gas industry just considers this the cost of doing business. Fines and settlements are just put in their budget. Now, the Constitution pipeline is going to impact New York's wetlands, its water quality, and its drinking water. The Constitution is going to cross 277 bodies of water. And there's a lot of new evidence that when pipelines are built under riverbeds and creek beds, that floodwaters, especially in light of climate change, the weight and the speed of floodwaters erode the bottom of the river and expose the pipeline, leading to ruptures. We've seen a number of serious accidents. Governor Cuomo's Department of Conservation actually wrote about this threat in a letter to Ferc. Did Ferc listen to New York State? No, of course not. The truth of the matter is, if Governor Cuomo doesn't say no to the Constitution pipeline, it's like signing a death order for New York's water. It is time to keep fossil fuels in the ground. And let's remember how fracking was banned in New York. It was years of your relentless organizing, your tireless energy, your demands. That's how fracking was banned. We can do the same with fracking infrastructure. Let's put our minds to it. Let's be single-minded. Let's put aside personality disputes. Put aside differences of opinion on tactics. Let's be an army focused on stopping the Constitution and all of the other pipelines. Stop the pipeline, stop the pipeline, stop the pipeline. We can do it. On to the clean energy revolution.
So next up is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has championed environmental causes across New York State and the Americas for decades. Mr. Kennedy serves as senior attorney for the Natural Resources Defense Council, chief prosecuting attorney for the Hudson Riverkeeper, and is president of the Waterkeeper Alliance. In 1987, he founded the Pace Environmental Litigation Clinic, which he still co-directs and which happens to represent Stop the Pipeline. He's also author of numerous books and co-hosts A Ring of Fire on Air America Radio. With that, it's my honor to turn this over to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Thank you, everybody. 3 years ago, I wrote an article, I co-authored an article with David Crane, who was in the New York Times for the op-ed page. And David Crane was the head of NRG, which is the largest energy distributor in the United States and producer. And NRG has coal plants, they have gas plants, they have hydro, they have wind, they have solar, they have bunker seal, they have oil plants. So they are agnostic about what kind of energy that they use. And they just want to use the cheapest form of energy possible. And what David Crane wrote was that in over 30 states today, this was 3 years ago when gas was at a historic low, $2 per 1,000 cubic feet. And he said at that time, solar energy was now so cheap that if he had $100 million to spend on a new power plant, he would not build gas, he would not build coal, he would build solar, solely from a cost perspective. So what Anne Marie and Wenonah said about the Constitution pipeline is true. It is a surrogate for what's happening across this industry, where they understand that this is a tired, dinosaur, expired business model. Right. The only way that they can stay in business for the next 2 decades, 3 decades, or generation is by hardening their infrastructure today and getting the pension funds and the banks and the investment houses and the governments invested in these new pipelines and pump stations and storage facilities and LNG facilities, so that we get locked in and you have all of these powerhouses around the country that now are invested in making sure there's gas flowing through that pipeline, even when it doesn't make any economic sense anymore. And what these people will say to you is that, well, you know, you have the environmentalists out here. We have to choose between prosperity and progress on the one hand and environmental protection on the other. And that is a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy. If we want to measure the economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, over the long term, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do what Cabot wants us to do, which is to treat Susquehanna County and Schoharie County and Delaware County and the Catskill Mountains and Pennsylvania and Massachusetts and Connecticut and New York State as if they were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate the illusion of prosperity by making a few billionaires richer. And our children are going to pay for their joyride. And they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes and poor health and huge cleanup costs and drowned cities, as Wenonah said, and a melted Arctic and disappeared species, and we are going to impoverish the next generation by making these people prosperous. And that is not a good choice. No. And the only way this makes no economic sense, and you know what this pipeline is about. This is not about making America a better place. This is about enriching a few billionaires and the shareholders of these companies. Yep. And the only way that they can get away with this is not by competing in free market economy, but by capturing the agencies that are supposed to protect the rest of us from pollution. And anywhere you see large-scale environmental injury of this scale, you'll also see the subversion of democracy. You'll see the corruption of public officials. You'll see the disappearance of local democracy, of zoning laws and planning laws. Why can't, this is America. It's supposed to be the template for local democracy. Why is it that a town in the Catskills cannot zone out a pipeline? Why do they have to accept that? It is the subversion of democracy, the only thing that makes this possible. And of course, the capture of the agencies that are supposed to protect the rest of us from pollution. And Ferc is the poster child for the captive agency phenomena. This is not a public agency. This is a sock puppet for the oil and gas industry. In the entire history of this agency, they have never, ever turned down a pipeline permit until this year. And that's because the Waterkeepers on the West Coast got together and applied democracy against Ferc. And we forced them for the first time in history to turn down a pipeline permit, and that's what we're going to do with this permit right here in New York State. I said, this industry makes no economic sense anymore. The only reason it makes sense is because they've been able to undermine free market capitalism by capturing the agency which designs the rules, that regulates and makes the rules for the energy industry in this country. So they make rules. Ferc, they're handymen, they're indentured servants in this regulatory agency, make rules that govern the energy distribution in our country, and they write those rules with the oil companies standing over their back, and the rules are designed to favor the dirtiest, filthiest, most poisonous, most destructive, most addictive fuels from hell, rather than the cheap, clean, green, wholesome, and patriotic fuels from heaven. And we need to understand that we are not protecting these counties and these 277 waterways and the 100 acres of wetland and the hundreds of thousands of trees. We're not protecting those things for the sake of the fishes and the birds. We're protecting them for our own sake, because we recognize that nature is the infrastructure of our communities. And that if we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, a nation, which is to create communities for our children and provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health, as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, and the big environment, the Arctic, which is melting, the cities which are the places that we live that are going to be inundated and buried. And these people that are getting away with this are criminals. We know now that they've been lying to us for 40 years about global warming. Yeah. Why are we even having this discussion? Yeah. Why aren't we just putting them in jail where they belong? The environmental movement was started in this country on Earth Day 1970. And I remember what it was like before Earth Day. I remember the Cuyahoga River burning for a week with fires, with flames that were 8 stories high and nobody can put it out. I remember when they declared Lake Erie dead. I remember that I couldn't swim in the Hudson or the Potomac or the Charles growing up. I remember what the air was like when I was a boy, where you would get the soot on you when you walked out of your house. And then, alarmed by these insults, 20 million Americans came out onto the street, the largest public demonstration in American history, and they challenged the power of the big industrial polluters. And it scared the daylights out of our political leaders in both the Republican and Democratic Party. And as a result of that outpouring of democracy, over the next 10 years, we passed 28 environmental laws in this country, Republicans and Democrats. Nixon created EPA. He didn't want to do it. He did it because democracy made him do it. And today, the only way we're going to keep winning these battles today is by keep showing them our democratic muscle. And that's what you guys are coming out here today and doing. We won this battle on fracking in New York State. Governor Cuomo has showed his national leadership on that issue. And today we're going to say to him, please, Governor Cuomo, turn down this 401 permit. Stop this abomination from destroying New York State, the place we love, the place we're proud. We don't need it. We don't want it. Tell it to go away. Thank you.
So we're going to quiet you down for a moment. Next up is Karenna Gore, who has an equally powerful message, but maybe just a little softer voice. Karenna is the director of the Center for Earth Ethics at the Union Theological Seminary. She previously worked as a lawyer and as director of community affairs for the Association to Benefit Children. Ms. Gore received her Bachelor of Arts from Harvard, her Master's in Social Ethics from the Union Theological Seminary, and her law degree from Columbia Law School. She is author of Lighting the Way, 9 Women Who Changed Modern America. She lives in New York City with her 3 children. Please welcome Karenna Gore.
Thank you. I'm here today for a few reasons. I'm a New Yorker. I'm the mother of 3 young New Yorkers. I'm a lover of the Catskills. I care about this land. I want to thank you all here for doing what you did to protect it, for putting the pressure on our state government to ban fracking. Thank you so much. And thank you to Governor Cuomo and everyone in his administration who showed so much leadership on that. I'm also here because I'm concerned about climate change. And leadership on climate change takes a lot of stamina. We're asking this government of New York State to have that stamina, to really make New York the leader in implementing the promise of Paris and taking us to a renewable energy future. There have been some really important new scientific studies, and I know sometimes the science can kind of get boring, but it's incredible to look at what we've just learned recently. There are studies that show that methane leaks trap heat in the atmosphere much more than CO2. How much more? 84 times. Not a little bit more, a lot more. And it's also methane's been leaking from this gas infrastructure much more than people thought. So these things combined mean that it's absolutely not appropriate anymore to call this a bridge fuel. We have to look at things the way they are, not the way some people in power thought they were. The science is very compelling on climate change, but it's also much more than just science and economics. Climate change is about how we relate to each other over space and time, what we care about. It's about the meaning of life, not just the mechanics. There's another kind of knowledge that's very important. I want to thank Roger Jock for bringing that ancestral Mohawk knowledge. We're in the Waterfall Unity Alliance together. There's a knowledge that says that when we cannot live outside of the bounds of natural law, and we are living outside the bounds of the laws of nature. We're digging up and burning and putting pollution in the air faster than the earth can absorb it. We have to listen to that balance, and we have to understand that if we're going to be in right relationship to the earth on the ground, then it's going to be in right relationship to the atmosphere. That's a lesson that we can learn from fracking and carry forward to make sure that we reject the Constitution pipeline. It is the wrong fuel in the wrong delivery system, in the wrong place at the wrong time. So thank you so much, and please, Governor Cuomo, please reject this 401 water certificate and protect our beautiful state and also our planet.
Thank you, Karenna. So where would this movement be without organizers? Nowhere, right? Right. No organizers, no organizing, no action, nothing. They would totally win. So as many of you know, once you start organizing, once you get involved, it takes over your life and it becomes an all-consuming activity. So we have an example of that here up on stage with us, and that's Rosemary Wessel, who co-founded No Frack Gas in Mass in early 2014. After reading online about the Northeast Energy Direct project, although I don't think it was called NED at that point in time, a resident of Cummington, Massachusetts, Rose decided to take action by forming key partnerships, making presentations to people, and suggesting ways for them to take actions to stop the pipeline. She did what organizers do, and she did it very well. So an organizer needs commitment and excellent communication skills, and Rose has those. She has a BA in Art and Design from Castleton State College in Vermont, and a Master's of Science in Energy Efficient Architectural Design with special interest in clean energy applications from UMass Amherst. She's also a graphic designer and owner of 3 Salamanders Design Studio, but I can just imagine where all of that work is going right now. So please welcome Rosemary Wessel.
Thank you for that comprehensive introduction. My one customer that's left gave me permission to be here today. Thanks for inviting us. It's wonderful to be here in the company of all these pipeline fighters from all over the Northeast, and we're all facing the same threats. When we first found out about Kinder Morgan's plan for our region, like many everyday citizens, many of us were already aware of the hazards posed by fracking and what those in extraction communities have been going through, thanks to films like Josh Fox's Gasland. But we were not so much aware of the dangers to health and safety, environmental and economic damage posed by pipelines. Thanks to you at Stop the Pipeline, Delaware Riverkeepers, and other organizations, we soon found out the dangers and learned that taking action was possible. We owe the success of our own resistance to those of you who started the fight before us. If the Stop the Pipeline site hadn't been there, and we didn't have your strategies to follow and build on, we never would have come as far as we have. And when the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline moved part of its path up into New Hampshire and threatened them as well, they could then stand on our shoulders again and build on what we had done in Massachusetts and take resistance even further. The fates of Constitution and the NED pipelines are tied together in a delicate balance. Cutting the cord to one can take down the other. Denial of the Constitution's pipelines with 401 water quality certificate can not only end Constitution, but cripple a supply source for Kinder Morgan's NED system. And it can also set a precedent for NED, Connecticut expansion, Spectra's Access Northeast, and all the other pipelines still under consideration downstream in New England and across the country. Far too often, those of us who work to stop pipelines hear criticism that we're alarmist, that these pipelines are heavily regulated and meet federal standards. Yeah. And that they'll be underground and we'll hardly ever notice them. Ask the people of Minnesink, New York, who now live with a compressor station for the Millennium Pipeline. Ask them about asthma, nosebleeds, headaches, rashes, and the days that they need to keep their children indoors. Look up what's happening in Minnesink with only 12,260 horsepower of compression. Read the studies by Will Masubra and Environmental Health Project. Then ask the towns of Brooklyn Township and New Milford, Pennsylvania, Franklin, Schoharie, Wright, and Nassau, New York, Windsor, Northfield, and Drake, Massachusetts, and New Ipswich, New Hampshire, if these pipelines will be going unnoticed. Although Constitution claims it can get by with just upgrades to the compressor station in Wright, NED would have 9 brand new compressor stations, totaling over 316,000 horsepower of compression. Though the industry loves to refer to natural gas as a clean fuel, NED's new compressors would spew about 650 tons per year of particulate matter, over 800 tons per year each of carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide, and nearly 2 million tons per year of greenhouse gas emissions. Is that what we want? As pipeline companies press harder and harder for expedited approval, for premature permission to start cutting trees before they have all their permits, they are racing to beat out competition from truly clean energy sources like solar, wind, and wave, which are expanding exponentially in efficacy, job growth, relevance, and public favor. As pipelines race to catch a few years left of a dwindling gas supply, and after years of extraction for extraction's sake, they're racing even harder to create markets where they don't exist. The communities that are in these crosshairs of corporate greed, eminent domain for private gain, and putting environment, economies, and health and safety at risk. Governor Cuomo, for the good of not just New York, but for hundreds of thousands of us downstream in New England and for millions of us across the country for whom this decision could set a life-saving precedent, deny Constitution's 401 water quality certificate. Thank you.
So last but very far from least, we have Maya Van Rossum, who's the Delaware Riverkeeper and has led the Delaware Riverkeeper network for over 20 years. She's a force to be reckoned with, I'll tell you. The role of the Delaware Riverkeeper is to give the Delaware River and the communities that depend upon it and appreciate it a voice at every decision-making table that could provide help or do harm. Ms. Van Rossum is a skilled environmental attorney, strategist, community organizer, facilitator, coalition builder, and manager. As Delaware Riverkeeper, she organizes concerned citizens, testifies before state and national governing bodies, oversees their litigation, and watches over the Delaware River and all of its tributaries. That's a pretty heavy task list. Her main office is in Bristol, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, fast becoming the pipeline state. So that gives her and her staff a significant step ahead of all of us in fighting these pipeline fights. They love to sue Ferc and give those biased commissioners a hard time. Please welcome Maya Wenonah.
All right, so I just want to be the one to quickly say, can we give a hand to Anne Marie, who's been doing such an incredible job up here? All right, so as we know, Ferc doesn't work. You know, when somebody says F you to you, you know that they're trying to deliver a message of aggression, of intense aggression. Well, the gas drillers and the pipeline companies have taken FU to a whole new level. When they say FU, they're not just delivering a message of aggression, but they are bringing acts of aggression to our communities, harming our resources, harming our families, harming our homes. Now, we all know what the FU is from the gas drilling industry. The FU from them is what? Frack you. And frack you means I'm going to poison your air, I'm going to poison your water, I'm going to poison your soil, I'm going to poison your bodies. I'm going to do it with impunity, without care, and without regard. Well, when the gas drillers or when the pipeline industry says F you, how do they say it? They say Ferc you. And what does Ferc you mean? Ferc you means I'm going to take your land. I'm going to pollute your air. I'm going to subject your families and your communities to the threat and the reality of accidents and incidents and explosions from our pipeline projects. I'm going to take your front yards and your backyards and your public parks and your peace of minds. I'm going to devastate your forests. I'm going to destroy your wetlands. I'm going to carve up your creeks. I'm going to inject them with pollution. And I'm going to subject critical areas of your watershed to devastating harm. I'm going to devastate habitat for species of all kinds. And I'm going to spew pollution and methane into the air so future generations have to suffer from the devastation of climate instability. And I'm going to do it with the blessing, the support, and the assistance of my henchmen at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Ferc you is what the pipeline industry says. The pipeline industry has been working for a long time to be partners with the pipeline industry. Oh, sorry, Ferc has been working a long time to be partners with the pipeline industry. In the early 1980s, they lobbied Congress so that they could be funded by the pipeline companies and the other industries they're supposed to regulate. And in 1986, they got their wish. And ever since then, they have been solidly bought and paid for by the pipeline industry, doing their bidding at every turn, at every opportunity, helping the pipeline industry deliver damage to our communities. Ferc has become the epitome of a rubber stamp. They have said no one time. In 30 years, they have said no to a pipeline project. And as we all know, that one no came just 2 weeks ago. And it was because they were backed into a corner and Ferc literally had no choice. They had no choice because communities like ours, communities across the nation, have been putting Ferc under such intense scrutiny that when the Jordan Cove pipeline project and the LNG export facility came before them and had not one single customer, Ferc was forced to finally say no. But that does not change the rubber stamp reality that is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They are the epitome of a rubber stamp. Ferc does not hold the pipeline industry accountable for their violations of law. They regularly turn a blind eye to illegal pollution and damage that happens during construction, operation, and maintenance of the pipeline projects. As far as we know, Ferc has never once imposed a penalty for violations by the pipeline industry during construction, operation, and maintenance. They don't even issue stop work orders to force these pipeline companies to come into compliance with the law and clean up their mess before they continue business as usual. And the fact of the matter is, why would FERC hold the pipeline companies accountable for their illegal acts when manipulations and violations of law are routine for FERC itself? FERC routinely allows pipeline projects to go to construction without all required permits from all required agencies. It is FERC standard operating procedure to strip people like us of our legal rights and ability to challenge pipeline projects in the courts before FERC sends them to construction. It is business as usual for FERC to strip states of their right, their legal right to say no to a pipeline project before FERC advances it to construction. But we are all here today to say no more! No more! We the people have rights, and we are standing together today to defend those rights. And the fact of the matter is, because of the irreparable harm the Constitution pipeline would inflict on the water resources of the state of New York, we have the legal right, even under the pathetic set of laws that are out there for pipeline projects, we have the legal right to say no to the Constitution pipeline. To tell Governor Cuomo, we want you on our behalf to exercise that right to say no. And Governor Cuomo, we want you to make sure that FERC honors your denial of the Constitution pipeline. Governor Cuomo, we are here today to say that we want you, we need you to champion our rights, to champion the rights of the state of New York, to champion the rights of all states across the nation, to say no to the devastation that pipeline projects bring to our communities.
Right on.
Governor Cuomo, we need you to make sure that New York and our communities and our natural resources don't get FERC'd by the Constitution pipeline! No 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 pipeline! And FERC doesn't work!
An organic transition to our next sequence in this event. And the next part is the action part. And I see we have a dragon to slay, a pipeline dragon to slay here today. So to help us do that and transition to the next piece of this event, we have Wes Gillingham, who's the program director of Catskill Mountainkeeper. Wes, are you right here?
Thanks, everybody, for coming out here. And I look around this crowd, and what I see is not people who are overwhelmed by the FERC process, not people who don't know what to do. You're here to change what government is doing to us. You're here, and we're not done yet. We had a bunch of good speakers, But we have to take this message from the Capitol down to the DEC. But first, we're going to circle the Capitol because we are symbolizing the hope that we have for a better future. We're not sitting on our couch waiting for Trump or Hillary or Bernie or anybody else to decide what our future is. We're here to make it happen. So we're going to circle that Capitol. We're going to circle that Capitol to remind everybody in this building, it's a cool looking building, but we're going to remind everybody in that building that it's our government. This is our government and we're going to make it do the right thing. And then we're going to take that message, and there's a whole another set of cool speakers who have to address the DEC directly. We're going to address the DEC on their front porch. Well, it's not really a porch, their sidewalk. We're going to address the DEC and get them to do the right thing because it's our DEC.